Okay guys, after I took a sip of my natural Dutch water, it is time to talk about the groups. You'll see the screen here and I'm pretty confident you're thinking like, why does he have so many different layers and channels open already, which is gonna really just drown your CPU? Well, I'm gonna drag the meter in here. It doesn't. As you can see, even though all of these plugins are open, it is not using any significant CPU at all. Neither it uses any drives, how do you say that? It doesn't use anything of the hard disk. So you just wanna leave everything as it is, and if you're starting a new template, I'm going to show you how to do that real quick, and I'm going to show you why the groups that we're working with are important. Now I'm going to just close all the groups to show you how many groups I have and what is the value of using groups. And also going to show you just how to start and create a group. So that maybe is important to do first. When you're clicking the plus sign here in Logic, it asks you for some options. What do you want to do? So in our case, it's mostly going to be a software instrument or an audio instrument. I'll do both for this sake. So I'm going to create audio and MIDI, and it shows up here nice and tight as instrument 7 and audio 1, which are the default names. So I will just both click them by using Shift, and it will really gray out both of these little tracks, and you can do like a right click and you can go to create track stack. Now when you do that, you have two options. You can folder it and you can sum it. And the difference is explained in this little details tab, where it will tell you what the difference is between the two, and you're mostly just want to go for a summing stack, because then you have the option to put plugins on top of your just created folder. I'm going to show you what it does, and it will name it Sum1. And as you can see at the left bottom here, you can now add some plugins to it. For example, I want to use Kickstart, which is our own sidechain plugin. It now applies to the entire track stack, to the entire group, and not just to one of these little tracks here. And when you would do the same thing without summing them up, I'm going to show you what happens then. I'm going to flatten the stack here by right-click and click Flatten Stack, and it will disappear. Now we're going to create the same group, but then with the other option, and it will do exactly the same, but just without the effects at the left bottom. You don't want that because you don't have a lot of control over what's happening unless you have a good reason to do so, and I never found in my life a good reason to use this option. So removing that again, flatten the stack. I'm going to remove these channels. Now you know how to create groups. We're going to dig in the first group, which for me is the kick. So I used ST just for me, as it stands for stems. It's actually the name that we use to export multiple amount of sounds in order to get it mixed down on the SSL, for example. So ST for me is just a word that I like to use, as it's a short for stems. You can pick anything that you like. You can call it group, you can rename it to even your favorite hockey team, maybe your favorite soccer team. I could name this Ajax if I want to, but I'm just going to name it ST Kick. And I have a couple of these lined up, as you can see, and it really, everything that it does is just it groups all the sounds together, so you have a nice and easy stack when you want to export it for mixing. Now, every time I click a group, you can see that it is loading plugins, which is a new function in Logic to just reduce the amount of CPU load. For example, if you're using Kontakt or any other of these massive banks, it's going to take a lot of your CPU if it's active constantly. So whenever you don't use it, Logic is just going to really suspend it for a while, so it's not going to use your CPU while editing other tracks. So it's absolutely fine that that's happening, so just let it be, and it's going to help you in the end of the project. Going back to the first group, Kick, what is in this folder? For me, it most of the times is just audio when I bounced it out. Sometimes there is a plugin in there if you want to create a kick drum with a plugin and sample it or export it to audio later on. So for me here, usually I just drag in a kick drum, and I can actually do that as we speak. Just to show you a little bit, I'm going to just grab one of my own kick drums, just to show you how that works, I'm going to drag in this splice folder, and I just resized it to a scale where it fits in perfectly fine with Logic's own environment. Now, I just pick one of the kicks that a friend of mine, Dennis Koyu, which is a member of Protocol Recordings, got of me for his sample pack. I just want to show him some love. And I'm going to show you what happens if I drag this in. Okay, there we go. Let's see if it works. Let's see if it plays out. And it seems to work, which is great. And you'll see that it's not the default color. It really is my own color, which I put here in for my own workflow. And now we have a kick drum going on in the group, and we have set our tempo, which is actually something I want to talk about as well. You have your first channel in your first group operating perfectly fine and smooth with your own color. It's really nice and easy to access right now, and if I close the group, you'll see it lines up and you have a lot of overview about what's going on in your project. And there's an easy way to pick your favorite color for the groups as well. You can just go for, you click the group that you want to edit and you click Option and C, and it will show you the color that it is assigned to. So you can basically make this any color you like. But for me, I just want to keep it red, and just for me that is the reason, and also the way to show myself, hey guys, this is the kick drum, don't touch it. It is in a separate key, and if you want to change the key of your song, you're going to have to edit the key of your kick drum. We're going to talk about that subject a little bit later in the course, but it is so important. So that is the first group. What else is going on? We have the drums. And what is in the drums? I always have a sampler, and the sampler basically is can be anything. I usually use the one of Logic, but as the update changed the sampler a little bit, I have more options, because I really love to use the quick sampler where you can drag in some audio here, but there is also a more advanced one, which is called the sampler, called multi-sample sampler, and it has a little bit more of these options, which I actually barely ever use because I just like to use the quick one, but it is an option. So that is the first track I have going on in the drum stack. Now there, I just like to have a couple of these audio tracks where you can just drag and drop your audio drums. It could be toms, it could be hi-hats, it could be anything that has to do with drums. And every time I just close the tab, I have it lined up nice and easy here. Same for the bass. Now for the bass, I barely ever use samples. I always tend to use plugins, and there's a few, as you can see, that I like to use the most, which is the Spire, the Nexus, as it is really easy to get a nice sounding bass in Nexus, the Massive for the more old school plugin sounding tracks, like for me that is like Home, Legacy, and it has most of the time just the deepest bass that you can get. Silent for an easy workflow as well. So I would just, in order of easiness, I would just change it a little bit to this order: Nexus first, Silent, Spire, Massive. But once you own the Massive or the FM8 like Skrillex does, you're gonna have massive basses. I don't entirely own it. I have, like, most of the times lucky shots if it sounds fat with the Massive. That's just being honest. Okay, jumping into the synthesizer section, what do we have going on there? Well, not a big surprise, but I have the Silent going on, the Massive, Kontakt, Serum, and Spire. And I have to be honest that Serum is my go-to plugin for synthesizers these days, just because it is so easy to edit. And once you understand the principles of Serum, you're gonna get to a really nice sounding lead really quick. So a lot of banks are available as well for Serum. So I would just suggest get a little comfortable with this plugin, because it's really gonna get you to places, and within split seconds you're gonna have your dream synth just in there in hand reach. So Serum is my go-to. I would just put it on top here together with Silent, Massive, Spire. Sometimes I use that one, not too many. It's mostly for layers in an existing lead already, and Kontakt for the more organic instruments. So that could be like strings, that could be like the more old school pianos, or maybe, I don't know, sometimes it's just weird sounds like Exile. an expansion for Kontakt that you can buy. But most of the times, these are the ones that I use the most. Moving on to chords. Nexus chords are easy, nice and tight. Silent, that's just mainly because I'm lazy, but it could be any plugin. Again, you see the different colors, so I know that it is a different instrument when I have the overview. Going for the strings, this really is mainly an easy plugin from Logic, just because I want to get a result really quickly. So I just basically use the one of Logic unless there is a reason to replace it by a better one of Kontakt, or even sometimes by a real orchestra, like the record that we've done lately, which is called Nights With You. There we had, thanks to Martin Garrix, by the way, we had a big orchestra playing the string section, and I just like to use this plugin to show the orchestra what I played. But it's going to be replaced later. So the strings section of Logic, then on piano, it is again an easy sampler just to get your piano sound nice and tight. Easy. So it is not the best sounding piano, but it doesn't matter anyway, because it really is about getting a nice result within a matter of seconds. So the piano of Logic, stock plugins, nothing fancy yet, and you can replace it later by better sounding plugins. Stems. Usually this is the section where I have my own stems, or maybe sometimes vocals, or maybe there's stems when you're doing a remix of other songs that you put in there, but it always is orange, which means to me that it is a section of instruments that I did not originally produce myself. So I like a nice and easy reminder, which is orange, the color of our own country. So I know it is from abroad, kind of my own way of saying it. Stems. You can make it any color and you can call it the way you like it. Effects. This is the group where we put in all the effects, the risers, the the weird sounding things, the impacts, maybe sometimes even sounds that you cannot place directly or you have a name for. Everything of that is going to be in this group. And you end up with the out 1, 2, because that is what is going to go to your master chain.